Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. I'm just going to take a brief moment to pause just before we begin, literally 30 seconds or 1 minute, to give everybody a chance to finish joining so that we can start together. So today's webinar will be the new normal, future-proofing your manufacturing business. And you're in for a very exciting discussion this afternoon. I'm eager to get on the way, and we're going to do that in just a brief moment. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the new normal, future-proofing your manufacturing business, the new normal demands change webinar. Today we're going to be discussing profit-driving strategies and how manufacturers are adapting to the new normal while remaining competitive. You know, there's many strategies that are under discussion in organizations, but 3 areas of automation can play a major role in future-proofing your manufacturing business. And we're going to explore this today with our guests, Godlan. They're going to share their insight about shop floor automation, supply chain automation, and labor automation. And through digital readiness and strategic automation, your organization can thrive in the chaos and be prepared for future turbulence. I'd like to take a brief moment and just share the team who's going to be discussing. So I'm Michael Thaw, the Vice President of Technology Evaluation Centers in our Selection Services Division. My background is distribution and manufacturing. I have been with the organization for more than 10 years and helped hundreds of clients with their software selection and technology adoption projects. With us from the Godlan team, starting with Ron Klontz. Ron's the VP of Strategic Solutions. He has more than 30 years of manufacturing experience, 25 years working with Cloud Suite Industrial. His focus is manufacturing with a background of accounting and technology. Next up is David Novacek, and David is the Director of Cloud Strategy Implementation Services. And he specifically works with a broad range of manufacturing clients, from specialty vehicle manufacturers to aerospace and defense contractors to furniture makers. So it's focusing on analyzing and evaluating current business processes to better align organizational direction with guiding principles. And the other person from Godlan that's joining us that's going to add a lot of insight is Jerry Walden. Jerry is a client solution executive, and Jerry's worked with Godlan and with Cloud Suite Industrial Sightline for more than 30 years. He's got, of the 30 years, 5 years in professional services, 15 years in pre-sales solutions, and 10 years in sales consulting management. And his role is client solution executive. So this is the team that's going to be discussing our webinar this afternoon. Ron, would you take a brief moment and introduce Godlan to our audience?
Be delighted to, Michael. Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. Kind of Godlan, a few points that we think are important. Obviously, there's a lot of details that you get into, and I've been on so many presentations, it's just boring. So I don't want to be boring. I want to make this really succinct, and we get down to talking about our strategies today. What you should take away about us is real simple. We've been focused in the manufacturing sector, delivering solutions to our customers for a long time, really since '84. These implementations, they've served a lot of customers across the U.S. and we're really concentrated there. But as you know, manufacturing today and the consolidations of the industry, you've got a lot of customers that have sites in Mexico and Europe and Germany, etc. So the implementations have both been domestic and international of nature, but we've been working with a lot of customers and heavily focused, especially with our offices and folks in the Eastern USA. The main thing about Godlan since our inception of the company, I've been with the company now I think this is my 22nd year, is we've been focused on manufacturers. So whether that's, discrete or variants thereof, it's that solving those complex problems day in and day out, dealing with all the facets and the growth and change in manufacturing. But our experts are really focused and honed in on that, which really leads to our team that we've acquired and built around the world is brought a lot of capability, and we have one of the largest teams of any Cloud Suite industrial partner anywhere in the world. Thought we put this together. There's a lot of facts here. Really a couple things I want you to focus on. Yes, we've been in a lot of projects. We have a lot of people, but notice over the top right, in all my 30 years of doing this, that's the key metric for me. At the end of the day, what does that mean? That means that when we get and we engage with a customer, we set realistic expectations because we know things don't go perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect project. Things always have surprises. But if you are really dedicated to success, you put a great team on the field with great people that are really focused on that success, then that's how you drive that metric. At the end of the day, we've got great people, we have great processes, and we really enjoy day in and day out what we do.
I'd like to give you a little flavor for who Technology Evaluation Centers is. So we're a global consulting and advisory company. We have delivered more than 600 evaluation and selection projects in our recent past, and we are entirely independent and impartial. We act as our client's advocate. And we are uniquely focused, and we have been since our inception, more than 25 years ago, on software selection and digital transformation journeys. So it's all about helping our clients reach their operational objectives. We're ready to jump right in on our topic today. And, I'd like to start off by asking a question of the team. We're going to use the word automation a lot, so maybe help us define what automation is and how it relates to manufacturing.
Michael, I'll take that. This is Dave. I think when we're defining key terms, like automation or manufacturing automation, obviously we want to make sure we understand and have a baseline understanding of what we mean when we say that. So when we're talking about automation, what we mean is that automation is the technique of taking a process or system from a manually driven process into one that operates automatically. And so translating that into manufacturing automation, we are taking a organization's internal processes or systems and transferring that from nature of manual in nature to that of being automatic. For today, what we are going to focus on for the purpose of our discussion today is really 3 key strategies. So those 3 key strategies provide distinct value to a company, and as well as having unique ways of implementing those strategies within the organization. So we're going to dive into them in a little bit, but those 3 key areas are shop floor automation, supply chain automation, and labor automation.
Great. So let's take a look at shop floor automation. Ron, I have some questions for you. So manufacturing is typically relied on personal interaction. How does process automation, what does it look like with, especially with respect to the personal interaction? And maybe you can share some benefits and techniques for automating the different processes in your description.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michael. In all the years that we've been doing this, we've seen that every manufacturer we walk into, they're in a constant state of, change and improvement, and to some degree, automation. Sometimes they call it that, sometimes they don't. The type of automation that really is, and the activities that are occurring, it really depends on the critical resources and bottlenecks of that organization. That area could be people, it could be machine, material, and how one goes about that automation will depend on, obviously, their current state of ability. That may be their current tool set, it may be their current ERP system, and current processes. So in these 3 states, in these phases of automation, I'm kind of going to go through and kind of discuss each of these because they kind of really build upon one another. The first step and phase we want to talk about is kiosk enablement. And what do we mean by that? Everyone's aware of what a kiosk is. We see them in the airports and all over the place. We walk up to a kiosk and we get our keys for the hotel or the car, right? So to define what that is, I just wanted to say that's my definition. It's a walk-up, self-serve kind of thing that would enable someone without necessarily having to talk to a person, which sometimes can be really good. So in this phase, what a company is doing is they're really in transition of their processes from really what we've seen as paper to some electronic form. That could be, in its infancy back in the 90s, I worked with companies to where barcode scanning was kind of the thing, right? That was really coming on the forefront. So now we've seen that really evolve into more mobile devices and now what I would call touchscreen kiosk for a much richer engagement. This is kind of the key strategy or the first phase of this. And each of these have obviously pros and cons depending on your manufacturing requirements. So what I mean by that, well, the requirements could be you could be in a high volume manufacturing arena to where you've got to have high volume barcode scanning just due to the nature of the business. Other places, it may be more low volume and potentially regulated manufacturing. That kiosk enablement and engagement is an absolute requirement. So these kiosks, when you look at this enablement piece, they're really designed to allow the shop floor resources, the quality resources, and even the material management resources, all to really engage in every aspect of the manufacturing order. So that includes maybe the work order dispatch, the drawings, the manufacturing notes, the quality plan, material requirements, the operator's ability to clock on and off of the work order, thus the application of labor, even scrap and other types of indirect reporting about activities so that you might want to drive some OEE and some other process improvement. So that's kind of a good summary of what this kiosk enablement is we're really going beyond just a transaction oriented like you'd find in a barcode environment. We're getting now that the operator can self-serve through the kiosk to really drive the manufacturing process for the most part in a very paperless environment. So with that being said, the kiosk enablement, I see that as a basically a first phase, if you will, into our next phase, which starts to move into machine integration. In this phase, a manufacturer is really looking to bring machine data into this manufacturing order and life cycle. The goal here is to really eliminate the time and cost of having, as we all know, those key operator resources on the shop floor. If they're off reporting and doing things, then they're not making parts sometimes, right? That's not necessarily good. So every machine today that's being produced really has the ability, with either connectors or through industrial IoT, with sensors that we can access the data on those machines. Once the machine is connected, a whole new world opens up to allow the operator, the maintenance, the quality, and the production control teams to see live how they are doing. This can be, for a lot of companies in various industries, can be the difference between success and failure with thin margins and competitive pressures from customers, etc. To give you a real world example, an example could be that we've got a CNC machine that has a pump on it and a coolant pump. If we're monitoring that in real time and connected to the machine, when that pump goes out, an alarm is automatically triggered. An operator doesn't have to get on the maintenance or the intercom and go, hey, I need help at, work cell 101. That's automatically triggered behind the background. An IoT platform, for example, could record the issue that occurred. It could send an alert to the maintenance team. It could create the maintenance order in the background and also create a schedule exception, all automatically done without any operator intervention. So that could be a serious area for companies that are trying to mitigate unplanned downtime and the cost and disruption associated with it. It could be this is the key strategy that they put in play to mitigate that. So those first 2 phases and strategies, the last one is really now looking at what a future state could culminate into in what's called lights out manufacturing. This phase is really the culmination of the work that we've done in those first 2 phases or strategies. And now we're looking to really automate those other processes that are really connective in nature. The goal would be is no human intervention. That would be ideal, but sometimes we, given the environment of manufacturing, it may not be, it may not be practical given your manufacturing requirements. Here we're looking at maybe trigger-based transactions that are event-driven behind the scenes and thus do not require human intervention. David's going to talk about this in his labor automation section a little later, but this could include things like labor and material backflushing, automated machine transactions via direct connections that we talked about in the machine integration. So the whole culmination of these and how you ultimately get to a place that you could really deem your organizations, a light outs manufacturer would put a lot less pressure on, having those key labor resources to pretty much execute and control all your manufacturing processes. If we're tying to the robots, if we're tying to those automated machines, thus the machine activity thus itself can drive the activity to where a person's not engaged. That is really what shop floor automation is all about. We believe it's a journey and not a destination. And with that, Michael, how's that?
Well, sounds like a very interesting journey, but let's talk a little bit about machine integration. I have some questions. It sounds remarkable, but is it difficult?
Great question, Michael. I'll try to keep it simple. We at Godlan created an IoT platform around 2 years ago, and I was kind of the head of that kind of, birthed the product and the idea. And this topic came up in a lot of our customers. They attempted to go down the road to talk to machines. But the difficulty is not all machines talk the same languages. Think of it as like they all had different printer drivers and none of them really talk to themselves. So the machines today are being delivered smarter than ever. They all have a brain or a PLC that sit inside them. And so there's opportunity to connect to those PLCs to mine the data that's sitting on those machines, Michael. And also, if you have older machines, there's now sensors, a whole host of sensors that are very low cost and effective in nature that can be placed in there, tied to an IoT platform. Thus, we can start pulling all that data real time, getting those alerts off to know when we're going to have a problem, kind of in the middle of it rather than way after the fact, and thus start to drive out a lot of cost and a lot of headache for manufacturers. But it is something that you need sort of a platform to really do that, because the customers that attempted it kind of on their own, it got too complex to really maintain and to roll out as an enterprise.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you.
Jerry, can let's focus on supply chain. So I've got a few questions for you.
Sure.
Multi-sourcing and materials and forecasting. Can you spend a minute telling us what supply chain entails and what it actually looks like?
Yes. When we talk about supply chain automation, it might be a benefit to go back a little bit of a history perspective. As you can probably tell, I'm older. So I started back in the day with paper and pencil. But, when we started looking at systems, we started with the manual approach, moved into, say, bill of material processors or spreadsheet type systems. And we thought that was pretty good. And then we moved in and we're thinking, well, to get the information quicker and faster to people, we need to really calculate how all of the shop floor would be automated to get the materials planning to purchasing. And that created a product called MRP, or a calculation called MRP. The idea from there was good. We all were, working with MRP systems. We were actually part of the first one in the marketplace for that. But it didn't include capacity. So capacity was the first foray into what Ron was talking about on machine integration, where we'd start looking at what was happening, what is available to be scheduled with our supply chain out on the shop floor. So we brought in what's called MRP2. We schedule the work centers. We know whether they're finitely or infinitely available, and how does that work move through those processes. It's good, but yet it's a bit slow. It's a bit, the information is what we call level by level planning. So it's hard to keep connected to the customer down to the lowest level of supply. Where most systems have gone, and it's the next evolution is what we call advanced planning and scheduling. That is where we kind of coined the phrase, make a promise, keep a promise. And that is entailing in our advanced planning tools option, where we see here where we take the actual entire company, not just the bill of materials, not just the capacity, but everything, customer orders, we take purchase orders, we take everything and put it all into what we call a networked system. So that gives us the ability then to see whenever one piece is on, one piece is off, immediately notifying the other areas of the business for that. It doesn't take time. You know, with MRPs, you have to rerun it, replan it, then roll it up, replan it. With an APS, it's immediate notification or automating any kind of signal that has occurred on the shop floor or purchasing, customer orders, anything in that supply chain will immediately be notified throughout the organization for that. Now, other pieces of this automation, especially in the supply chain, is the lightning speed, as we know, Michael, of the internet. I didn't even know how to spell the internet there at one point. So we now have full email, full access. People demand immediate 24/7 information. At any point, they're on in their house, they're on the road, they're in a hotel, they're wherever it is, they demand access to that. And that's where supply chain automation has now escalated into more giving that 24/7 capabilities and notifications. I guess that's the other side of that lightning speed of the internet is now supply chain automation. We can now take information out of the system and notify people when something has happened, something needs to happen, or something needs to change for that. Now, if we look at the past, again, we go back in history, a lot of stuff we used to do, we take forests and trees and we cut them all down and we create paper out of it, and we would print volumes and volumes, reams of data to run our MRP-based systems. You know, we don't need that anymore. We don't need that kind of tons of data to analyze to know that our business is doing well. People are wanting it, obviously, with all the new social media tools. They want it online. They want it email. They want it text. There's a new, not a new language, but XML-based format to be able to immediately communicate data, not printed, but data between systems for that, which is really the bottom line to supply chain automation. Ron talked about automating the machinery. We're talking about here automating the data, and so that we only work with exceptions. Let the company work let the system work, let the company do the normal stuff, and then use supply chain automation to notify us only on issues through that. You know, a lot of this, Michael, will be done through, you know, the advanced planning systems, the portals, and electronic is all the backbone, of course, is the internet and the access to the data for that. But with all that information can also be a glut of information, too much, and people, you know, they can't really work with their systems. So really what we're looking for out of supply chain automation is a trigger-based application, a trigger-based system that delivers the data to the individual users when there's an issue or when there's something that needs their attention. In essence, we find the problems find you, not you trying to find the problems. That's a pretty long-winded. I got to take a breath here, Michael. What do you think of that as an explanation of supply chain automation?
That's a very good start. So let me, you focused on 3 different areas, but can you talk to us a little bit about the benefits of automating supply chain?
That's an awesome point, Michael, because with, with all of these systems out there and all these things we talk about, if you don't have value coming out of it, it doesn't mean that much. So when we talk about advanced planning tools, what is that really giving you? Well, the idea here, when everything is networked, everything is tied together, we literally can shorten the order processing time from days and weeks to minutes because everything is known to the system. Delivery times then means a shortening of the information out to the warehousing. That means they don't have to order a bunch of parts just to make certain if that order happens or if that comes about. So customer service actually will go up with the information of the automating the supply chain, and inventory levels go down, as you will not need as much on hand for that. The paper side of it is I think the benefits there, you don't have to order paper. The cost there is immediately out of the reduction in paper because we deliver through supply chain automation, electronic communication, all invoicing, anything dealing with the customers and suppliers immediately delivered to the backbone of the internet and delivered right to their email or their text or their social media. So all that paper is gone. Plus, you get the benefit. Now, I don't know what the ROI, but there is an ROI out there for speed of delivery of that. Now, but we look at speed and accuracy of the supply chain automation being, there's a lot of different firms out there like yourselves, TechEval, that look at this, and they have calculated that when you automate the supply chain of the 3 different areas we talked about, 61% can be sped up. 61% of your business cycles, and that's time of receiving an order, of time of delivering, can be sped up. So that's a lot of slowness in the manual process for that. So we look at now minutes of communication, Michael, between orders to demand to delivery versus waiting days and weeks, waiting for delivery of information. Sometimes you call that snail mail, others call it the postal service, but we call it the internet and delivery of automation for that. Some of the other areas that we see out of when you do automate the supply chain is approximately 20% reduction in cycle time, order to cash, receiving the cash. The information is immediately readily available to the customers, to our partners. It's not like we have to wait. So decision-making, delivery times get reduced on that. Making things electronic, not having to rekey the information, there is typically a 30 to 40% reduction in transaction of errors for that. Eliminating, of course, handwriting errors, lost faxes, mail, all the standard stuff that people had to deal with over the decades. When I was implementing the software, we had to deal with that. So expenses, we talked briefly about that with paper. We have seen when you automate the storage, retrieval of all the documents, you can think of all the filing cabinets that we used to have in the basements of all these manufacturers and distributors, now being server-based and now cloud-based. The cost is dropped drastically. Of course, retrieval speed is improved, and we see the transaction cost is right around 35% when you go from manual-based systems to a supply chain automated electronic communication. Those are some of the stats we see, Michael. That's
significant. Why don't we take a look at labor automation? So I'm going to ask for your help, David. We don't really hear of labor automation very much. Can you tell us what it means and maybe share some examples?
Sure thing. And I think we've spent the beginning part of this conversation with Ron and Jerry. They were both focusing on and discussing options for automation strategies within core areas of the business, right? Whether it's the shop floor, or supply chain. I would say an often overlooked area of automation or automation strategy, or even an area that we don't have a clear defined strategy for, is that of labor automation and the advantages that it can bring. Now, when we talk about labor automation, what we're discussing, what we mean by that is the practice of substituting with our technology investments that we've made for human labor to perform specific tasks or jobs. This automation, sometimes it can be involve mechanization, right? So as Ron referred to earlier, maybe we're displacing some human workforce on the shop floor with machinery. But it also is leveraging that same technology investment, such as our information system or our business system, more commonly referred to as an ERP system, right? Or enterprise resource planning system, to further remove people from menial or repetitive tasks. And then therefore the advantages that you can realize by doing that. The entire concept of this labor automation piece surrounds ways in which we are leveraging those technology investments again, and transitioning out of knowledge-based tasks or positions, right? Rather than just merely replacing manual processes. So, you know, today a lot of organizations have those few key resources who, like Jerry, have been around for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And they know how to do their job or areas of their job because they have been doing it since it was defined, right? So the reason why they know how to get a task or job completed is because they were on the forefront of the wheel development, right? What we want to do is leverage our technology through a series of strategies to enable our workforce and remove them from those menial tasks and remove them from the requirement of I have to have 20 years of experience to complete these tasks. So what you're seeing here right now is, you know, I've outlined a typical 3-tier strategy to kind of introduce the concept of labor automation into an organization and discuss kind of the progression as it moves throughout a company. Right? So first on the left, what we're going to focus on is the consolidation of business systems. So what we want to focus on in this kind of strategic element of labor automation is leveraging our technology investments such as ERP. We are able to now leverage those tools and introduce things like robust workflows, right? So, you know, workflow engines aren't a new concept, but being able to bring those into a business system allows us to now leverage that tool. The ability to consolidate our reporting engines or reporting tools out of our business system, as well as introducing a unified system of record. So let's talk about kind of each of those 3 key things kind of in a little bit more detail. So when we talk about robust workflow engines, you know, today, let's take an example of a purchase order approval, right? This is a common task that pretty much every organization has to complete. Specifically, you know, let's loop back to what Jerry was talking about in the supply chain automation piece. A purchase order today, it gets created, it gets printed, it gets handed to a manager who signs it, who then puts it in another person's mailbox, right? Who a director level, depending on the product, maybe depending on the price of the purchase order or the vendor it's going to. They have to sign it. It makes its way around the business, ends up in the finance house where they see all of the signatures. Hopefully they've all signed it so it doesn't have to traverse its way back through the organization for additional signatures, gets signed and then gets processed. You know, I've personally seen those types of scenarios take, you know, days to weeks to get an approval on a purchase order. Transitioning that to what we can do today with our systems that we have in play, we can set up rules-based workflows in our business systems. And we're able to say, hey, if this condition is met, it goes to Mary. And if this other condition is met, it can bypass Mary and go to Luke or Paul or Joanne, right? So we're able to build in our business rules and have our business system enforce our business rules, taking out the manual aspect of those sorts of processes. Significant advantage there. You know, we're seeing things that were manual in nature cut down to you know, hours or days, from days to weeks, right, for those processes. Once we have those in place, now you know, other advantages of that consolidation of business systems is the ability for us to consolidate reporting tools. You know, we work with a lot of organizations where Excel is the business system of choice, and every department has their own Excel sheet that they manage their area of the business off of. And when we get into our Monday morning planning meeting, which turns into our Monday and Wednesday planning meeting, which turns into our Monday, Wednesday, Friday planning meeting, we spend the majority of that time consolidating those Excel spreadsheets to make sure that we have the appropriate load on the shop floor. And we have all of the open purchase orders in their statuses. All of the sales orders are updated. And because everyone is working off of different reporting tools and versions of those tools, it takes us a while to catch up and have, you know, one system of truth, one report of the truth. And so now that we are leveraging a business system to manage our workflows, also having that business system be our reporting engine of choice allows us to all see the same information at the same time. The underlying little caveat to that is that we're also using that business system for our system of record, right? So we can't have these access databases floating around the business with all different levels of information and expect that we can appropriately make strategic decisions at the business level when we're working off of different versions of the truth. So this is really kind of phase one of labor automation is let's herd our cats, right, and bring them all together in a pen. Let's make sure that we have one system of the truth. We have one reporting tool that we are all now making business decisions off of, and we are using that tool to validate and enforce our business system, right, our business processes. So that's really kind of our first phase and our first strategy for labor automation, right? We're taking some of the menial task out. We're taking away some of the manual updating of data silos, and we're bringing it together. Once we have that solid, we can now progress into the business intelligence phase. In this phase, what we are focusing on is, okay, now we have a very strong system of record. We have processes in place that are being enforced. And so what we're able to do is we're able to leverage BI tools so that we can now start accurately reporting on key business metrics, right? So we're able to strategically get together as an organization, and each department is able to develop key business metrics. And we are able to monitor the health of our business and or department based on those metrics. BI tools also allow us to analyze, right? So we can now start doing trend analysis. So instead of just looking at what's my problem today, I hope it's different tomorrow, I'm able to start trending out over periods of time. And so I can start to look for conditional events like, hey, it looks like we're probably going to have a seasonal down spike based on our last 5 years of sales orders. Or it looks like every June we're going to have an issue with this one key part based on the last 10 years of manufacturing data, right? So we're able to now start analyzing for those trends. This also, BI allows us to commonize source data. So let's say we're an organization that has multiple facilities or sister sites. Maybe all of those sister sites are running unique business systems or unique ERP systems. Business intelligence platforms allow us to commonize that data. So again, we can have a consolidated reporting tool of the organization as a whole instead of business unit by business unit. So it allows for us to, even though sister company A may be running, system A, sister company B running system B, we can still at the entity or corporate level have a commonized set of metrics and trends that we're reporting off of. And as BI has grown, it is becoming more real time. So the information I'm looking at isn't from 3 weeks ago, it's from this morning. So being able to take a look at business intelligence in a real-time fashion is where we're at today. Once we have that business intelligence strategy nailed down, we now are sliding into where we are today, right? And where we are today is the introduction of artificial intelligence into the business. So this is a little bit more in depth than just your simple, hey Siri or Alexa type commands. But what artificial intelligence is going to provide organizations is the ability to recognize patterns, right? AI is really good at recognizing patterns and automatically can automate routine tasks or processes that they see are commonly approved. And they're able to now do that in the background, eliminating the need for repetitive tasks to be completed by your people. This then frees your people up to be more strategic and work on the business instead of in the business. A couple examples of that. So let's go back to my purchase order example. So we initially set up a purchase order workflow in our first strategy that said, I need to approve every PO over $1,000. Well, let's say over 6 months, we have quite a few purchase orders over $1,000. And every time we have a PO that is from vendor, ABC, it gets rejected. And every PO that comes from vendor CDE gets approved. AI is able to take that historical set of events, and now it can apply an automatic approval to a purchase order over $1,000 for a specific vendor because it's recognized a trend that we've never not approved this, so I'm going to go ahead and approve it, right? So its ability to now dive into what I'm doing from a process perspective and start automating that is going to become key because it can move faster than we can. It also has think about the capability of analyzing for business trends, right? So in the BI phase, we were reporting and looking at metrics, we were looking at trend lines, and we were having meetings to discuss, hey, where do we think our business is going to go? What do we think is going to happen? AI can perform a significant amount of calculations against the data it's getting and come at us with suggestions. So I could come in the morning to an email and see, I think that you're going to have a dip in sales next month because of these 3 criterias. Now, we didn't have our meeting, but it recognized based on actions that were occurring in the business that we potentially are going to have a downturn and can alert me to a condition that hasn't occurred yet. And that's really where AI is going in the business world, is that it's going to be leveraged, its computing power is going to be leveraged to analyze processes, conditions, activities at a significantly faster speed than we can do manually. Even though we may have a perfect system, unified system of record with workflow engines and a BI tool on top of it, artificial intelligence growing into this space is going to provide the ability to monitor things like we don't have the capacity to do today.
Thanks, David. I have a question about cross-functional training. Can you tell us, what it means and how it can help?
No, yeah, that's a great question. And so cross-functional training, I would probably loop that into that consolidating business system strategy. And what we've seen there, and let me just make sure. So when you're saying cross-functional training, what we're talking about is a shop floor person being cross-trained in procurement, or quality being cross-trained into a shop floor operator's position, right?
Yeah.
So what we've seen, the benefits we've seen in that area is as you start to cross-train employees, one, the employees who are open for that cross-training capability, they are excited about the business. They want to understand the business and how the business works. So what we typically see is when cross-training occurs, organizations have a significant improvement in process because those cross-trained employees understand how one area of the business works. So when I start understanding how another area of the business works, I know how it's looped together. So they can provide input from a tactical level, how to improve the business to, maybe it's improve throughput, maybe it's to speed up a process as it moves through the organization. So whenever we have the opportunity to suggest cross-training, recognize that there usually is a process engineering portion of that cross-training.
Thank you, David. So thanks, team, for the introduction and the insight into areas of automation that can future-proof manufacturing business. And we focused on shop floor automation, supply chain automation, and labor automation. What I'd like to do now is just take a little bit of a breather and open the audience up to some questions and try and help or share some of your experience. We'd definitely like to hear from you. I'm just going to wait for a brief moment for the questions to come in, and it'll definitely be worth your wait, so please hang around for the questions. I usually find one of the most interesting parts of these types of discussions are the questions that come about. So I see this question. It says, how fast do these things take, and what's required? Do one of you want to handle that?
Hi, Michael. This is Ron. The time will really depend on kind of, as we talked about with the automation, it's going to depend on a number of things. Where are you at in your ERP journey, right? Because most of the ERP tools, some of the, obviously the more current systems are going to have a lot of the techniques and capabilities. Where they may fall short is like in the realm of having an IoT platform that may be an add-on module or an advanced MES kind of module from a shop floor perspective. So it may be that you might have to acquire some additional functionality from your vendor or look for a solution in that area. But a lot of times in the workflow arena, we find that those can be really quick hits because a lot of times it's functionality you just may not have implemented yet. So it might be some training, some additional consulting that might have to happen. And you could do that over a period of just, weeks with internal and maybe a little bit of external help. Whereas you get into other places, advanced planning and scheduling or business intelligence, those may be modules or applications you might need to acquire that would have some additional implementation time around them. Usually those are measured in, several weeks to maybe a few months. All the way to maybe bringing in an IoT platform that really could augment the whole machine connectivity and then the journey there down a path of trying to get to more of a really true, pretty much hands-off manufacturing reporting operation. And those can be also in a matter of weeks.
That's great. And I see another question here. So I want to show the team. So we talked about shop floor automation, supply chain automation, and labor automation. What other areas of automation do you see and should be focused on?
Ron, I think, if you don't mind, I'll grab that one. Michael, I think, for the purposes of our conversation today, we really wanted to focus on kind of, 3 key areas. When you look at manufacturing automation or automation for your business, I think that there's some key areas that we didn't discuss, right? So we didn't talk about, financial automation. We didn't talk about sales automation, what that means from, from a portal perspective or automating order entry. But I think the biggest one you've seen a trend across Ron's conversation, Jerry's, and myself, and that's tying back to a strategy. And so I think, if you're looking at automation from a corporate perspective, the first thing we need to do is develop a automation strategy. And then how are we going to expand that strategy down the company into the departmental level? And what benefits do we want to get out of it? So, from an automation perspective, really, if you slice and dice up your organization at the department or business unit level, there's clearly areas of the business that can be automated. But it has to always roll back up to the core corporate strategy that we want to employ those against.
That's great. That's great. So our moderator is Priscilla, and I wanted to see if there's any additional questions that I'm not seeing that are coming up on your side, Priscilla. Okay, well, I think that's a great start. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank the team for the discussion. I enjoyed it this afternoon. I hope the audience enjoyed it. These were, 3 areas of automation that were part of strategies that can play a key role in your business, in future-proofing your manufacturing business. The shop floor automation, the supply chain automation, and the labor automation. And don't forget, this is all about, digital readiness and strategic automation to help you with future-proofing your business, thriving in chaos, and the turbulence that can come. So, adapting these will bring you tremendous economies and will allow you to be competitive in the process. I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and look forward to the recording of the session. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.